So tonight we're going to go on now and we're going to look at cash flow. So what they've done is they've set the stage for looking at your goals financially and personally. And now we're going to look at your cash flow that you come in having over a year, starting with monthly cash flow. Why they're doing that is most financial planners are trying to identify where you can get savings from. Because if the idea is for you to manage money well, then we want you to create a savings flow that you will have. So you'll be able to do investments and properly manage things. Okay? So what I thought we'd talk about tonight, and you see in your outline, is just going over how we do that, how we analyze cash flow over a period of a month, how we identify savings that we can get from it, and what the purpose of it all is. And we'll do some biblical references as well. At the end of the evening, you'll have trouble getting to sleep, so I thought I'd do some business math, which will really put you to sleep. Some formulas and stuff that you won't want to even remember. So if you have a look at your lecture notes, let's start off with what a personal cash flow statement is. Okay, so let's start off and look at monthly income. All the money that you've got coming into the household. Okay? You may want to note here, and you project, some families have this in the beginning, that the wife or the husband, I'm hearing of a lot of house husbands now, including my son, okay, will have to take care of kids for a number of years, if that's what the plan is. And later on, you can project that into what you're going to be doing. Okay? Because that's obviously a reduction in income that you'll have to take account of. Okay, so let's do a little schematic up here on the blackboard and try to get an idea of what most people go through in terms of income in their life. And what I'm going to do down here is put time, so how old you are. And over here I'm going to put dollars. So I'm going to be looking at cash inflows that you get over your life. So most of you are probably at college or at trade school. That would be this period, fairly low. Then all of a sudden you get a job and you have your career. Then you reach a certain age, you'll be into retirement, so your income will drop off. And here you are in retirement. So this is the years here that you will have savings. You're not going to have them during this period of time. And during this period of time, you have to generate savings and investments to pay into what? RRSPs, and if you're lucky, a pension plan. Because you're going to need them to fund that retirement. Living in Canada right now and funding your retirement on CPP, how good is that? It's rough. I wouldn't want to live on CPP alone. It's not easy. Okay? So the trick you want to do is to generate savings here and put it into here. And that means we very closely have to look at the inflows of cash that you're getting through your lifetime and what you're doing with them. Okay, monthly expenses. Can you note here that we need to break them down into two types? Fixed, variable. Fixed are payments that you get every month, regardless. So they could be a rental payment, a mortgage payment, property taxes, utilities, your insurance. All those kind of things that you have to pay every month. Those are fixed. Variable are things that vary. So that could be restaurant meals. I would probably put food underneath that because it goes either way. Okay? Recreation, vacations, those kinds of things. Those are amounts that vary. Okay? They're not a fixed thing that you see every month. How do we keep track of that? well, things are really good for you right now, and I'd recommend doing this. Why not for 3 months just use your debit card? Don't use cash. And every time you use a debit card, keep a record of what it's being spent on. Is that all right? Okay. Or you can go to various computer programs that do that for you, that you can link into your bank account or whatever you're using, and very, very quickly get a very strong idea of where you're spending money. Okay? So it's important to keep records for at least 3 months. Okay? So we have an idea of that. Okay, now, I'd like you to note here under spending, we want to identify, even starting now, we talked about it last week, what's emotional spending? And why are you doing it? Because it makes you feel better to spend the money. Would it help if you look at this 3-month record to start identifying maybe some of those areas? Right? When you're really, really down and you go out and buy whatever. Is that okay? So emotional spending is something we want to identify and deal with. Learned behavior spending. What's that? Could your children, think of this, be picking up on the way that you're spending? So that if dad spends in a certain way, oh, that's what my dad does, I'll do that too. Does that sound right? Or the way that mom goes to the shopping center and spends money, would the daughter maybe pick up on that? I don't know. Okay, there's arguments that that's a learned behavior, and maybe there's some stuff that you don't want others to learn that isn't so good. Maybe there's some good stuff. I don't know. Okay. What's the word nudging means? And this is a word that's big in economics right now. I'll put it up for you here. A related word here is triggered. What's that mean? Oh, you did come back. I thought you'd be down on the coast, lying on the beach, 30 above. No? Oh, next week. What's nudging and triggered mean relating to spending?
Nudging is like when you sign up for a company and they automatically enroll in the retirement plan unless you opt out. So it's nudging as part of it.
Yeah, it's big in economics now. It's modern companies are very sophisticated, and when they market to you, they know they can get you to do certain things. So the options they give you very quickly are, you've already bought the product, or whatever. It's like a trigger thing. Okay, I'll give you another example. Not so much here, but my son just bought a house in Winnipeg. Very competitive real estate market, very sophisticated. There are companies down there that rent furniture to real estate companies. That's all they do, specialize in that. What are they doing? Say again? Staging the house. So if you want to sell a house, don't sell it empty. Put it with some really nice furniture that matches it, and it will sell more quickly. Is that triggering a sale or nudging? The same idea? Okay. Or another one, they have sprays. I think the spray they use in homes is fresh bread. Spray that in the kitchen before the people come in to view the home. Would that help? Yeah, I mean, these are all techniques, and you should be aware of these things, shouldn't you? When you're out spending your money. Okay, you should know that they exist, and later on in more detail, maybe money that you shouldn't be spending, you should learn about those triggers. What triggers me to do whatever? I know a big trigger sometimes for me personally that I gained a lot of weight on is when I was depressed. How did I fight depression? Well, cheesies. You know, if there was a shop that sold cheesies within 10 miles, I was there. Okay? I got to admit, my wife is just as bad. You know, I go through the home and periodically I'm finding hidden caches of cheesies that I didn't know existed. That she had under the car seat or wherever. Okay? So be aware of triggers and nudging, because we're going to look at your spending and talk about it. Okay, factors that affect expenses. Next part of your notes. The more people in the household, the more spending. That would make sense, right? 2 people spend more than one single person in a household. As people age higher, the brackets of spending go up. So as you age, and you should put here as well, your income is going up, does your spending follow that? Okay, so you make higher salaries, you tend to do what? You're going to spend more on housing, vacations, cars, and so on. I want you to put something down, though, that's kind of neat, that's something we've observed in economics. When incomes go down, the spending drop. No. Once people get up to a certain bracket, and now you cut their incomes because someone's lost their job or whatever, they fight it like crazy to go back where? To where they were before. It's called the ratchet effect. In other words, it tends to go only one way. Okay, it's a pattern that's observed. Okay, also note retired people, and I'm now in that bracket. By this stage of the game, your spending should have decreased because you need to do what? You should own all your assets now. You shouldn't be going into retirement with a mortgage or a car loan. That should be over. It should be paid or sold or whatever. Does that follow? Because in retirement, what's going to be happening to your income? It's going to drop. You're not working anymore. Right? Okay, so we take them on a monthly basis, the monthly income we're making, then we get the monthly expenses that we have. We've kept track of it with a bank card or on a computer program. And we get a net amount. And you see at the bottom, it's called net cash flow. So at this point in your notes, you should write income minus expenses equals what? Net cash flow for that month. Net cash flow for that month. Okay, now, if you did this for 1 month, right, can you now do it for the next 2 months and get 3 months in a row? Is that okay? Just doing it? At first you think you can't do this, but you can. Okay, especially now with bank card and all the computer programs. I wanted you to write 3 names down that are really good. I talked to my son and he used one of it. It's called Mint Canada. Anybody heard of them? MINT? He says, and I looked at it, it's an actually stupendous way to keep track of expenses, payments, everything. And it's for free. I think they're advertising and everything in it. But the basic system's just set up for you. So have a look at Mint Canada. You could even do that tonight on your phones if you've got them with you. Another good one that I got hold of is called My Money Coach. My Money Coach, again for free. As you enter things, it creates even graphics showing you what you're doing. Another one, which surprised me, is run by the federal government, is called My Monthly Budget. My Monthly Budget. And they've got it online. So as part of your homework from tonight, have a look at those 3 sites. If you're not using Mint, maybe consider it. And maybe in this example, because I hope that you are going to do at least a month, if not 3, then maybe use Mint to do that. And just see how you do, okay? Now, the good news about this is you can compare yourself, once you've done all this, to normal families. And if you remind me, I forgot to bring it this week, but I've got statistics on it. I've got spending on housing, spending on food, spending on clothing, spending on recreation for families in Canada, 2016, and it's by income quintile. So it goes from low-income families right through to the upper-class, high-income families, and there's 5 of them. So I think it would be great, once you have your month done, to look at that and say, okay, am I in the ballpark here? Okay, am I not in the ballpark? Okay, and then it might also give you, if you're not in the ballpark, to start asking questions. Well, why not? What am I doing that's wrong or right? Or, maybe you're doing something right, but at least it gets you to ask the question, right? One thing that I'll tell you with married couples, and it's a story from my marriage, is that in my marriage, every time I spent money, it was absolutely essential. I only bought things that were really, really, really important to the family to keep the family going. My wife, when she spent money, it was a disaster. Anything that wasn't that essential, the bills were flowing out of her hand on kids' clothes, food, that kind of stuff. It really got me upset. Okay? And I actually did this one time. I got all steamed up. I was mad at Mary, and I did all this, and I worked it all out. Went running to look at, the comparison to the average family in Canada. Do you know what? She was right on. There wasn't a problem. She wasn't a big spender. The big spender in the family was who? When it came to fishing equipment and cheesy bags or whatever else. Okay? So I think it's really a worthwhile exercise to do that. Okay? Get your month and compare it to other families, and maybe set up with one of these programs and have a close look at it. If anything, it'll save you time on managing your personal finances. Okay, so what we're going to do now, assessing the accuracy of a budget, is try looking at your 3-month budget and then compare that to your goals. Can you remember last class we talked about these are the goals that we have for finance? So put in your notes here, what I'm doing, does it reflect those goals? Because if it doesn't, there's another question you should start asking yourself. Like, why are we spending in these areas when that's not one of our goals? Right? Is it because we historically did that, or we really haven't fleshed out our goals properly, or what are we doing? Because the nice thing that we could do, once we have the 3 months, get the actual 3 months, and then say to yourself, how could I restructure that? How could I take those numbers and come out with numbers that reflect my goals? Maybe more should go into recreation, less into food. I don't know. But that's the kind of thing that you may want to ask yourself. I got this off the internet, and it's a personal balance sheet. And just have a look at how detailed this gets. I think it's Desjardins, which is a credit union down in Quebec. I've never seen them in Alberta. This is very detailed, but at least it will bring up to you things you need to look at. Now, one thing I didn't mention that I should mention, you could put it in your notes. There are payments that you get that don't happen every month. Maybe you pay car insurance only once a year. That's how I do it. Take that and break it out into each month by simply dividing by 12. Okay? Or if you pay a certain person in town once every 3 months, divide it by 3 and put it out over the months. Okay? Also allow for seasonal variations. So on your heating bills, just spread it out so it's one payment equal all the way out. Okay? Because typically wintertime is a lot more expensive than summer, right? Okay, next, improving the budget. Okay, we should look for things that we can reduce. So, have a look at the expenses that you're doing and say to yourself, can I reduce them? Are there things that I'm spending too much on? Okay? And try to identify what those are. Because what we're going to try to do is create a condition where we can create savings. Look at expenses that are not necessarily very closely. What would be biggies? No. That's fixed and necessary. Okay? Would I say restaurant meals? Sometimes you're at McDonald's and you really don't need to be. Is that okay? Entertainment, that could be a biggie. You want to have a look at that. Okay? So try looking at things that you're spending too much on. Cigarettes and liquor. What's a deck of cigarettes now? Is that $10 for a package? I think it's big money. If you were smoking for a year and you're buying a deck a day, $3,650 a year?
I think it's $25
For just one package?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I bought it once for some of the workers this year. We were in a nice place.
$25. So that's outrageous. So to me, I'd be identifying that very quickly, especially since it's a health hazard. What about liquor? You feel like putting it on the necessary list? No. We should look at that, right? That's quite expensive stuff. I mean, it's $30 for a good bottle of scotch and so on, right? So you want to have a look at things that we can identify out right away, right? Some things may not be so obvious to you that you spot later on. Things that you may not having to do, right? Does a family need 2 cell phones? In your case, yes, right? But if we're trying to identify savings, the way Canadian phone bills are, that's where you have to start questioning a few things, right? Okay, nudging. Okay, could we create conditions in our life that would make it hard for us to spend money on things we don't need to spend money on? Are there things we could do? Okay, so here's a biggie. Could you and your wife sit down and say, we will not spend more than $50 without the permission of the other? Not a pleasant thing to do, but if you're serious about this, could you do that? Right? Sometimes in a marriage, if you're not getting on, what does each of the couples do? Oh, you spent $1,000? I'm going to spend $1,200 on that brand new fishing pole. Fix you. Right? You want to avoid that situation, right? That's not helping your financial goals, is it? Okay? Let me give you another example. If I have trouble with liquor, and at one time in my life I had a bit, one year, I got into a home hobby, making wine. It was ridiculous. I got production costs down to $2 a bottle. And I ended up with 150 bottles in the basement. And then I got so, coming back from the college in the evenings, well, why not have a drink? Well, and then I said, that was pretty good. Why not have a second drink? Right? And that kind of thing is bad. After about 2 or 3 weeks of it, I realized something. One day I was walking in front of the window, and I was just all on edge, and I didn't know why. And you know what I suddenly realized I needed? A drink. And that's where I got really frightened. Okay? So if I wanted to avoid liquor, I could sit there and say, I'll never have another drink in my life. That's good for how many days? Maybe, 2 days, yeah, and you're back at it again, right? So do we have little rules that we put in about liquor? What I'm getting at is I never drink before 4 in the afternoon. I never drink alone. I only have drinks with a meal. Those 3 things, would that reduce you drinking? Yeah, they do. I'm going for a drive, I never drink. So we have all kinds of little rules that we put in place. Could we do that with restaurant meals? Where instead of saying, wow, there's Mr. Mike's, I love their steak, we're going to go in, you say to yourself, no, we only go to restaurants with friends, we only go to restaurants after 6, we only go to restaurants after we've agreed as a couple to do that, and all this kind of stuff. Could you not use nudging that way to back off on a lot of decisions? Okay? Or another one, when you're going to the car dealership to buy a car, you're telling me about how fancy it is, so I'm going to pick on you. Prior to going to the dealership, could you make a deal? We're not buying any accessories, we're not buying their insurance, we're not buying extra tires, and no matter what that salesman says, we're not, and make a deal before you even go in. That's nudging, isn't it? Yeah, you're going to control it. Is that okay? So I think you could do that to reduce spending. That might be a technique that you could get into. Envelope. Envelope is an old technique, and that is you literally take a stack of envelopes, all you got is cash, and what are you doing? This is for heating bills, this is for groceries, this is for going to restaurants, this is for going, and when the envelope's empty, what do? You're not spending anymore. I guess you don't eat for a week or whatever, depending on what envelope you put the cash in. Okay? It's not really done very much now. I'm really amazed how few people carry cash anymore. I'm older, I carry cash, but I'll tell you, at the college, you see people buying coffee with a card. They don't even have cash for that. Okay? So I don't know. That's kind of an older technique that we'd worry about now. Another idea they had, I read in a book, is what? Every time you have any change, you have a cup there at home, what do? Just keep putting the change in, right? And eventually you'll have a pile of quarters or whatever, hopefully. Okay? Pay yourself first. Can you underline that? Pay yourself first. So you're getting money coming into the bank. Could you go to the bank and say to them, I want you to automatically take 10% of that check, the net of it, and put it into another account, and I'm not going to touch it. Could you do that? Yeah, you can. Okay? And what you're literally doing is you're paying who first? Yourself. For that month, that's your money. You earned it before you do any spending. Because if you don't do that, what does a typical family do? They get the money and out it goes, and at the end, there's how much left? 0. There is no savings. Okay? So it's just a way of what? Promoting savings, getting that idea of investing. Okay, let's turn over the page. And we can go on from that. Before we do that, are there any questions about these personal balance sheets? Any trouble that people would have filling them out? I'd suggest you do it on an Excel sheet. I really do. Or even better, go to one of those 3 programs I told you about and just put in the categories. Exactly.
Ropes are built, and tires, foam, everything like that, and then broke down into bulk on each one of those. And then we put money away, and then,
Yeah, and then you can start filling out the Excel sheet and you just keep going.
yep.
And it's all there listed.
It's amazing how quickly you can actually put money away, you know.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I wasn't even working for highway. It's amazing how that was.
Yeah. When you look under personal assets, by the way, things like furniture, if you're being honest about it, should you be putting in the cost that you paid for them at the brick warehouse or stuff? No, you'd be lucky to get half that, right? So you can be a little bit conservative on that. Any other ones there that look a bit iffy? I'd have trouble with art, trying to figure out what something's worth, unless I had a purchase price. Can you see all the different registered plans listed? They're all there. I'll put a plug in for the church. Once you have this monthly scheme done up, could you check that you're tithing properly? That you're paying your 10%? And if you're not, would you feel guilty? Yeah, he's looking. No guilt. Okay? But it's something I do periodically, just to see what you actually are giving. Okay, so things we're going to look at that are not good habits, maybe you can think of some that we should worry about in our spending and that we're coming up from. And here they are. Borrowing from friends or relatives. Is that a good idea? No, that's a really good way to lose friends. We used to do that at the boarding school in Victoria. That's how a lot of guys got beat up. Okay? Debt consolidation repeated. So you've gone in and you've had 6 different credit card debts, and they've given you one big payment that paid all that out. Now you're doing one payment at a time. And a year later, now you've got a debt consolidation payment and another 6 credit card payments. What's the pattern that you're presenting? You're again presenting a pattern of out-of-control spending. You're spending and you're borrowing to spend, to buy shirts or whatever it is that you're doing. Here's a good one for Grand Prairie, repeated home equity loan. Okay, and I'll explain this one to you. So I work for an appraisal firm, and they have files on houses and all the appraisals they've done. Okay, and a real typical pattern you see in Grand Prairie, people buy a house. This is the cash they've put in. This is the mortgage. And they bought the house in 2010, and by 2015, the house value has now gone up. What does the family do? It comes in and borrows even more mortgage money. Or gets a bigger HELOC, a bigger home equity loan. And so I saw repeatedly in the 90s and the early 2000s, these home values would just go up like this, and these people would just follow it right up. They'd be remortgaging all the time. They'd never build up equity in the home or even hope to pay back the mortgage loan. Okay? Now that to me is a pattern of you got problems. I knew it was taking place because as appraisers, we were really lazy. We'd go back and get the old file because we could just not measure as carefully and get the job done that more quickly. Probably use different sales 5 years later. Okay, can everybody understand the idea? So that's a pattern and quite evident in Grand Prairie and not a good pattern. Here's a biggie that I've seen. It's hiding accounts or separate accounts if married. What's that tell you? accounts that your wife doesn't even know exist. I've got family members that do that. So the farm's up in Radisson, where's the account? It's in Saskatoon. And the wife doesn't even know about it. And it's all discovered when the guy dies. Then they're all scrambling around to find out these accounts. Okay? I just went through my dad passing away in Australia. He had got married a second time. He had a whole bunch of accounts that I don't think Shirley, my stepmother, really knew about. He had money coming in on 5 or 6 different pensions in Canada. She didn't have a clue. When my dad passed away, we spent the first 2 months trying to figure out what pensions he actually got. She'd have to wake up at 2 in the morning or something to call Ottawa, because Australia is on the other side of the world. Okay? So to me, that's just bad news. Isn't it better that husband and wife sit down and just put it all on the table? Right? What I'd like you to do, more homework, and I want you to write the following things down. You could try it on your phone. It's worked for me. I want you to put Bank of Canada, unclaimed balances, and write down unclaimed balances portal. Find it, use it. Search your own name, and then get really nosy and put all the names of your relatives in there and see what comes out. I know I found a bunch of stuff of my relatives. I found $600 on one of my cousins that teaches at a university down east. I think I got some kind of card to go to a fast food restaurant for finding it. How she could mess up on $600 is beyond me, but she did. Okay? So these are often, I think, accounts of people where people don't know someone died and that's it. The lawyers do try to find them, but they sometimes they don't. And no, if you're thinking of renaming your name Wang to get the 30,000 in Windsor, it won't work. They check it out as to who you are and when it comes. And I think some of those, if it's over $5,000, I read today they keep it for 100 years at the Bank of Canada. So the chartered bank that has the unclaimed account will move that to the Bank of Canada, which is federally owned. So what you need to do then is search that out and see if you can find any family accounts. Okay, and just put in common names of your relatives and see what comes up. Okay, I know other cousins I've found out that really are not that old. They've left a couple $100 in some little town somewhere, or who knows, that kind of thing. Okay, personal balance sheet, present and projected. Last week, our personal balance sheet was done. It's also called a net worth statement. Can you remember that? Okay. So you're now developing your 3-month statement. You're kind of comparing that to where the statement would be if you followed your goals, right? And if you meet the general guidelines for other families. And now you're going to take that thing and you're going to use it full year. So it's 3 months, you multiply by 4, there's your full year, isn't it? Are we okay with that? Now, just like an accountant can do it, could I take a net worth statement here, do the projections of what you're going to spend and make throughout the year, and then use that to come up with a projected net worth statement for you at the end of the year? Can you follow the idea? So you could sit there and say, at the end of a year from now, here's what my net worth statement will look like. Maybe that's a good thing to do, because then you can say, I'm going to all this trouble, I'm going to be suffering. Why are you suffering? Okay, raw economics. You're not spending money, you're not receiving enjoyment. What are you doing with the money? You're saving and investing it, so you need to know it's worth it. You need to know at the end of the year, we saved $22,000. So all not spending, which is not enjoyable, was worthwhile to create this, which is something we need for a different goal, something more important. Okay, to go over this, again. I wondered if I got another copy for you. Let me give you out this as well. I may have given you. I've just given you your personal balance sheet, right? So you know that's the, and put it at the top, the net worth statement. Are we okay there? Yep. And if we look in detail at that net worth statement, you can see assets there. We initially write down assets in it. You need to identify what are liquid assets. Liquidity means the ease to which we can move an asset from being an asset into cash. The liquid assets that we have are cash in the bank, savings accounts, and checking accounts. So savings and checking accounts, can we make that into cash really quick that day at the bank? Yes, we can. Okay, so they're highly liquid. Okay, other assets we have are insurance, might have a cash in value. Like if you trade it in, you would get money for that. RRSPs. Okay, would you ever trade in your RRSPs? There's a biggie question for tonight. Registered Retirement Savings Plans. What's the problem? Here's another story from my family. My dad retires from the diplomatic service, goes to Salt Spring Island, does a major bad thing. He builds himself his dream home on the Gulf Islands. Runs into a building contractor who preys on old guys like my dad. Okay? The cost for the building was way beyond budget. What did he have to trade in? All his RRSPs in a year when he still had what? Income. Made his income what? Outrageously high. Who's waiting there? The government. And taxed him like crazy. Can you understand the idea? When should my dad be cashing in RRSPs? Right here, when he's got a low, right? A low income. That's the time you take him out or roll him into RIFs or whatever. Trevor Davis will go into that when he comes here to talk to you. Okay? So although on your forms, your net worth form, you've got RRSP as an asset, what's a smart move if you need money? What could you do? Maybe. Don't cash them in. Go to the bank and get a loan, and the security of the loan would be the RRSP, maybe 50% loan or whatever. Could you do that? Yeah, because you want to avoid tax if you possibly can, right? So it's an asset, but you don't want to cash it in. Pension, what's the catch there? I, on my pension at the college, had a cash surrender value, a value I could write on a financial statement. Okay. Once I got past age 55, that cash surrender value disappeared. It was simply that I would get a pension. Right? So I only win if I actually live, right? Okay. Although I could put the cash surrender value of the pension in that net worth statement. If I've got it. I could go back a number of years and come up with it. Okay? They certainly use it in divorce cases or other things like that, right? Okay, other things you're going to put in is the house, the car, the furniture. The furniture will be like half the price of what we paid, right? Bonds and stocks. What's a bond? It's debt of a company, so you've lent them money. You don't own the company, but you've literally lent them money. That's a bond. How is a stock different? How is a stock different than a bond? You own. They teach that in Regents. I didn't know that. Good. Okay, so if you have stock, it's ownership. So if I have stock in a company, I own the company typically. If I have a bond of a company, I don't own it. I am lending them money. Okay? If you want to get the valuations of bonds and stocks, you could simply go and they change daily on the stock market. And then you can write that into your net worth statement. Right? That's the source for that. Okay? Liabilities, I think you know all of those. Let's just note their credit card, so things that you know. I'd like you to put a star on that. Why would I want to identify credit card debt? Can you put it's the worst debt of all? It's typically outrageous. Even now it's like 18% or some outrageous an amount, right? So we always identify that wherever we can because we would like to do what with that? Get rid of it, get it for a different type of debt or whatever we can do. Credit card debt, student loans, mortgages, so you owe money on your home, personal loans that you've gotten from the bank. Okay, now here, you might want to write down that short-term or current loans are less than a year. So if it says to you a current loan, a short-term loan, that means it's due within a year. Okay, is that okay? Typically a credit card has revolving credit. It's due within a year, isn't it? It's current, okay? Long-term debt is more than a year. Long-term debt is more than a year. Here's a form I should have given you, and have a look at it before we go on. This is the personal cash flow statement, and I went on a site on the internet and got this. And I need you to have a quick look at that too, because you'll be writing this one up for homework, and see if you've got any kind of questions on it. Trying to get these pages up. Just have a look here at the numbers given. Can you get the idea of how they're identifying income and expenses? Any items that come to mind? I think, can you see that they're very quickly putting out gifts and dining? Maybe circle that. Because you're identifying discretionary stuff that maybe isn't that important, right? That you could cut. It's a U.S. one. You can see federal Medicare payments. Travel is down there, so there's another discretionary one. Charity, I guess we could write in tithing there. Club memberships. Okay, so there are different categories, and you can see they've done, in this one, 6 months, haven't they? They've worked their way through it. So we've looked at spending over a year. We've looked at what we actually do over a year, 1 month, then projected onto 1 year. We've tried to compare that to our goals. So we've taken that and somewhat changed it to meet the goals that we thought were important from last time. And now we've got the projected cash flow. And we're going to be able to make ourselves feel good, come up with a net worth statement, which is projected. Is that everybody okay there?
Just a question. On the front page, it says total monthly cash flow. And that's the sum of the previous 6 months. So I was reading that for self-explanatory.
Yeah, it says 18,380, and at the other end, I'm just looking at it, is that the end number?
Yes, it's for 6 months.
Right at the bottom here. Yeah, so that's telling you, I would say, that's only 6 months. Is that right?
Yeah,
So the family's doing pretty good.
but it's semi-annual.
Semi-annual, yeah.
So are we believing that we would
We should try to do annual. Double that.
left over after expenses and after total?
This one here, yeah, is only done for 6 months. And that amount, that is not the expenses. I thought that was the net. Am I right about that, or am I wrong? Let's have a quick peek, everybody.
I think it's wages minus,
Salary's 45, right? All the tough of this, and they haven't added it all up, have they?
there's also another income source.
Yeah. So we'd have to add up all of the income, then add up all the expenses and subtract the two, and get net cash flow at the bottom. So this is what we're going to be doing then for homework, right? Another thing that you can do is to work out what we've accomplished. So our new net worth over here assets minus the liabilities is the net worth, and we want that climbing. And what we want to do is get assets going up and liabilities going which way? Going down. And that will be the result of what? Getting savings coming out of here. So we're going to squeeze savings out of that process by getting rid of bad spending. Does that make sense to you? And we'll use the savings to either reduce liabilities or increase assets, and that will result in net worth doing what? Going up, which is what our goal is. Yeah? Okay, notice that we have three ratios to look at. We have a liquidity ratio. Here's the formula for it. You should write that down. If you take first year accounting, they'll go through an entire couple of chapters showing you how accounting statements are done. And then they'll do ratio analysis, about 13 key ratios that you have to learn. And you look very quickly at how a company is doing, whether it's going to survive or not. So these are three ratios that you can use to look at what you're doing on your personal finances. Okay? So liquidity ratio, what are liquid assets? We identified three of them, I think. Cash, savings account, and your checking account. Is that all right? Okay. So those are three places that you can get hold of cash very quickly if you have to. Can anybody tell me current liabilities? Okay. What's key about credit card debt? Why is it current? Within I'm hinting. You got it. You married a genius. You're going to tell me he already knows that, right? Okay. So current liabilities are debt that we could be forced to pay back within 1 year. Is that okay? So if a whole bunch of people came to us and said, I want to be paid my credit card debt right now, I've got a demand loan with you and I want it paid within 3 days. That's what a demand note is. A lot of car loans are like that. You would get the cash to pay those loans where? Here, wouldn't you? So if this was $20,000 in liquid assets and your current liabilities were $10,000, your ratio would be 2, and it would suggest to me you're in good shape. If they come and demand all that money right away, you've got it. You're just like a business that's operating on a certain amount of cash that it needs, and it's able to do it. Is everybody okay? Okay, which way do we want this ratio to go? Try drawing an arrow. Which way should it go? And I'm hoping you all put this. The bigger the number, the better. So if you did that every year, you're analyzing what's been happening. You want to see that number getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it suggests to me that if it hits the fan, you're going to be in good shape to deal with it. Is everybody okay with that one? Yeah? The next one they give you there is debt to asset ratio. Here again, if there's a financial crunch, things get tough, you lose your job, or whatever, right? How would you pay back the money you owe? Wouldn't you have to get rid of assets? If you lost your job, you couldn't make the payments on the house, the smartest move you can make is sell your house, isn't it? And by selling your house, you're able then to pay back the mortgage. Is that okay? Your house is an asset being sold to pay back a liability. What would be a really great number to see here? How's that number? What am I saying there? For every dollar that you owe, you've got $20 worth of assets that you can sell to pay it back. That's a good number to have. You can sleep at night. You can put your head on the pillow, can't you? Is everybody okay there? So which way, if I had to put an arrow there, would you want that to go? The smaller the number, the better. If you could make that 1 out of 50, that would be really tremendous. Can you follow the idea? What do you say to the family, though, when it's like this? That's kind of bad, isn't it? They owe 200 and they only got 50 to pay. They're probably going to be what? Declaring bankruptcy, aren't they? Is that okay? Yeah. I'm going to be somewhat cynical. You could also say this is a good thing, right? Because you can just leave town and, wow, you got rid of 150 worth of debt, right? Can everybody follow the ratio? But generally, we want it going down, right?
But when you're starting out and you have a house mortgage, your total liabilities are $250,000, and your assets are $20,000. Like that would be
The truth is, yes, and it's a good point. We should put it in. These ratios should be matched to where you are in your life cycle. If you're the initial young couple just trying to start up, you're going to owe horrendous amounts of money and feel yourself quite helpless. right? But the reality is, over time, it will get better. Hopefully, by the time you retire, there's nothing here, and life is good, right? Can you understand what we're saying? It depends on where you're at in the life cycle. Initially, a young couple will have very, very high debt. I think our first mortgage, our home that we first bought, I'm trying to remember how I actually bought it. I had a first mortgage, a second mortgage, an illegal third mortgage, and I think I gave the guy a coin collection and some cash as a down payment. That was my memory of it. And other than that, I never would have gotten in the home. It was a wonderful home. It had a swimming pool in the basement, which really meant every time it rained, there's an old furnace down there. There'd be a foot of water in this crawl dugout thing. But it was home.
So are there rules of thumb, guidelines for
I'm sure they are, and you could probably look. I haven't got them with me tonight, but that you could look maybe at the age people are at and start saying to yourself, "What does this make sense on what I'm doing?" Yeah.
just to clarify, in retirement age, if the person rented a spot, that's not considered liability, is it?
Say again.
If you're paying rent as a senior, that's not a
Have you
liability.
signed a contract for rent?
Well, there's a lease or whatever, or a life lease.
Then I'd put that in as a liability. I mean, you owe that money, don't you?
Yep.
Or you could do what I would do and have a lease breaking party. Which is you buy about 8 cases of beer and invite every animal you know, guys. Yeah. He's a landlord, he knows, and just get the party rolling.
Like you were saying earlier, like credit card debt being bad, debt, it can also be a moneymaker for you too.
Yeah, if you've got, you were telling me, I mean, some crazy car company is giving you 0 interest, then you know, that might be one way to balance it. But I'm talking normal credit card.
But I have a credit card that carries probably 21 or 22% for that I run there. But I also get points if I paid off every month.
Yeah, you can efficiently manage it for
So I
WestJet points or whatever your goal is.
or a Royal Bank, like anywhere. And then
You will like Mint. I was looking into that, Mint Canada. Get that one because it's got, right away it shows you all their different credit cards and all their terms. So it's like advertising for the credit card companies, but it enables you to shop.
well, the thing is, as long as you are in control of it, you know,
Yeah,
get out of control.
but don't ever miss a payment.
If you stay in control of it, then you do it.
Then you're okay. Okay. Savings rate. Savings over disposable income. You're all budding economists. That's S divided by YD. Savings divided by disposable income. So disposable income is the net of your paycheck. It's income less taxes is your disposable income. Money that you actually get to what? To spend. Okay? And this would be a really good ratio to have off this document. Just to say to yourself, well, are we saving 5%, 6%? What are we going for? What are we doing? And then, as you were saying, compare it. Canada has very low savings rates. Just minuscule compared to what it should be. Okay? Also, I think you could put here, this should be matched again to life cycle. If you're in trade school or college, what's your savings like? Non-existent. Okay? When you retire, what's your savings? please tell me it's zero. I had a big fight with a friend of mine who's got a net worth of over $2 million. He's crazy. The net worth just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he's been retired 10 years and he won't spend it. He's busily, making money for cash and collecting bottles, or I have no... He just loves to do stuff like that. He drives me nuts because I'm into, spend it. Don't give it to your kids. His kid's going to love him. Right? Say again? No, he's got one kid. Yeah. This guy's got it made. He knows. Okay? But the big savings for you should be during your career. And write this down. From about the age of 50, once you're an empty nester, through to about 65, you should be saving like crazy. You need to. Right? Because those are high earning years. The kids have left home, I hope. And that's where you're going to get your savings. And that's where you want to look at this ratio and make sure it's a good one. Which way should it be going? Can I put an arrow going up? The higher the better. Right? Now, sometimes we don't want it to be too high. And I think Trevor will talk to you about that, because you're then going to get into being taxed. So as you know, in the tax system, there's a maximum RRSP contribution and so on, right? Maximum TFSAs. And you may not want to be going above that. Okay? Because if you have savings being put into investment that aren't tax advantaged, then the government's going to have their hand out on it. Right? And that's not a very good idea. Okay, if we could turn the page. This is where you guys get to do some work. We're at about 8:15. And what we're going to do is read various Bible verses. Do we own assets? No. We are given charge of assets by God. Would that make sense to you? Okay. That we get a use of them if He blesses us that way. Okay. What does this scripture tell you, though, about managing those assets? Say again? Be smart. Don't get ripped off by this guy like he was by the supervisor, right? That was pulling a stunt. He literally robbing money from the steward, right? Okay. So it means that when we do personal financial statements, when we look at our financial goals, we are simply being good stewards. And we are charged in the Bible with being good stewards. And when we mess up financially, we're not good stewards. We're not taking care of the assets that God entrusted to us. Would that make sense to everybody? Okay, so that's why we're spending the time tonight trying to look at how we can be better stewards of these assets. In a way, it's selfish because we gain too, but these are the Lord's assets, and we are accountable for them. So again, we're going with the same theme. Remember, we talked about financial goals, and when we have that one of the problems we have when we don't develop financial goals, do we become selfish? All we want to do is go after wealth for the sake of wealth itself, right? So part of us being stewards are to manage this wealth, but not be after it all the time. What happens in our lives if we place our security on wealth? What's this telling us? Yeah, you're going to die. But not only that, these assets that we build up so carefully, what can happen overnight to them? They can be blown up, there can be a fire, Grand Prairie real estate prices can plummet 40%, whatever. All that stuff can go away, and we'll really be in trouble. Our security has to be what? The bedrock, which is Christ and God. How about that? Would that verse tell you that? Again, developing that theme. So it's telling you, at least at the initial part, what about debt? I'm thinking get out of it as quick as you can. The debt of love to another Christian is always there, but get out of debt as quick as you can. Now, it's a little bit weird for me now, because I know mortgage rates are 2%, but I could tell you when I did financial planning classes 20 years ago, the first thing I told the people was, buy a house. That's the smartest investment you'll ever make, because your principal residence, you can sell it, and they cannot what? Tax it. They cannot tax that. It's yours. Okay? The second smartest thing you could do in those days was pay off your mortgage. Because the mortgage rate, I can remember my last year as a mortgage broker was, I think I did one at Grovedale for 18%. Okay? And I can still remember even in the late 80s, I think we were 12 or 13%. Okay? So your smartest move financially was to pay out the mortgage. Is that okay? Yeah. And that meant that you were making a return on your investment of what? The mortgage rate. If I'm not paying 13%, surely I am making 13%. So we'll look at it more, but can you see here that we've built up savings, and we're going to use that to reduce liabilities and or get assets. Okay? And we're doing that, and it meets a biblical principle, which would be what? Get out of debt. Right? So what's that telling you about debt? It can enslave you. So the person lending you the money, they're the king, the boss. You're the slave. You're indebted to them. You live in one of the most indebted countries in the world. The shocking thing you always find, we're such a rich country, yet we're up to our eyeballs in debt. And no one thinks about it. Okay? And there is a time coming where a crunch on that one. There always is. Okay? And so it's a biblical principle to what? Get out of debt so you're not enslaved to someone. You're not forced to sell your home for nothing and all this kind of stuff because you lost your job and you got big mortgages or whatever happens. Okay? So who's in charge? The lender again. And the tail is you. You're the slave. You're at the bottom. You're subject to their whim. Is that okay? Yeah. And so there again, we want to do what as quickly as we can. Get out of debt. I was really lucky. I had 2 jobs. I had my house paid off, and I was out of debt by the time I was 45. It was incredible. And after that, life was good, because then all that money goes to you. You're not paying off somebody, and you can do all kinds of good things with it. You know, build up your assets and so on. Okay? So any questions on those verses? You think we've nailed it, sort of?
So we're talking about slaves here. But when you look at like the world has been using China kind of as a slave for many years to make all the products cheap, to the point where the slave now is almost in charge of telling the rest of them, here's what we're going to do.
Well, China's been very clever by keeping its currency undervalued. The U.S. has been running enormous trade deficits, and in effect, it owes China billions and billions of dollars. And yes, it's the same relationship. It puts China in the driver's seat. I probably won't live to see it, but I'm thinking our kids, the preeminent economic and political power will be China, not the U.S. if they keep it up. Yeah. Okay, let's look at when should we borrow money. Okay, so we've just talked about a whole bunch of verses that say, whatever you do, don't borrow money, don't owe money, pay it out. Okay, so I'm going to give you one of my other life experiences. We hired a secretary at the appraisal company. Very beautiful girl. She's about 17, 18. She had as a boyfriend another 18-year-old guy from BC. Where else? From the island. Sorry. That means they smoke dope. I'm a bigot. Okay? And this 18-year-old went out and bought an F-150 truck, which I know I can buy for about $50. He bought it for about $75,000 to $80,000. The salesman convinced him to load it with everything he could think of. He did not need it for work. He did it with all borrowed money at the age of 18, and his uncle was crazy enough to co-sign that. What's co-sign mean? The uncle is now responsible for the son's debt. Okay? I noticed this car because she was a drama queen. Every week they'd have fights. And I'd come running in and she'd be just bawling her head at the table. And I'd be over there the first couple of weeks thinking, what happened? This is terrible. Until I found out her and the boyfriend had another fight. Okay? Then we'd all feel sorry for her. And then by about 4 in the afternoon, it was all makeup time, and she'd be running out to this expensive pickup truck to make out with him because they were buddies again. So after a while, I no longer paid attention. Now, do you think it was a wise thing what this guy did? To go borrow money for a truck that he didn't need at all? Okay, can everybody put that one down? Okay, as not a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to put a formal way to say it, to purchase an asset. So it's okay to borrow money if you're purchasing an asset that grows in value or keeps value. So it's okay, don't purchase an F-150. What'll happen to its value? It's going to crash and burn like you wouldn't believe, isn't it? Okay. But it's okay to buy a house with debt because it'll probably keep its value and may even do what? Go up in value. I'm jealous of people my age. My sister's one of them. She bought a house in Toronto for $300,000. It's worth over $1 million now. Same people in Vancouver, right? They can just retire on their house value alone, sell out, move to Kelowna or Nanaimo or wherever, right? So only borrow money if you're purchasing an asset that goes up in value. I'm going to pick on Happy Trails. Should you purchase a trailer? No. That's one of the worst things you can buy. You should buy it for cash. Okay? Because a trailer immediately does what with value? It just tanks. It's worse than a car. right? Okay, another good reason to purchase something. The asset purchase can be worked to pay the debt. The asset purchase can be worked to pay the debt. That young 18-year-old, if he had a job checking lease sites as a contract worker, could he have taken the F-150 and then it might not have been a bad deal? He could have depreciated it, he could have written it off against the money he was making checking lease sites. Can everybody follow the idea? Okay. Or kind of similar, maybe you need to get a job in the industrial park, there's no bus service, and you buy a beat up old car. I think Victory Church gets involved in stuff like that. That's a good idea, isn't it? Because they're using the asset to what? Produce money, aren't they? And I put finally the asset as a necessity. If you absolutely have to have it to survive, I guess you got no choice. Okay, are there any other good reasons for borrowing money? So generally, don't borrow money, but there are 3 places that you could borrow money that would be worthwhile. The last one, should Jeff be borrowing money to buy fishing gear? No. You know how long it takes to even get hold of a trout? Trust me, it's way cheaper. Just go to Costco and don't buy the equipment. Right? Okay, we've got a few minutes left here. I just wanted at the end here, if we had, maybe 10 minutes, just to go over some quick math stuff. And we're dealing with the value of money over time. So the value of money changes over time. The value of money changes over time. Okay? Very typically, you're in an economy where interest rates aren't zero. They're 2%, 3%, whatever. And that will cause that money to be changing in value. Okay? Usually, as we go into the future, the value increases. As we go into the past, the value gets what? Less. We have 3 ways to talk about the value of money in time. Simple interest, compound interest, and annuity flow. Those are the 3 major things that we use in business. Okay, I find it really helps just to draw in pictures and then they stay in my mind. So simple interest, we have over here P, which is the principal. We have over here S, which is the amount. We charge an interest rate. And we end up with a formula. And there it is.
What's the S thing?
That is sum or amount. So if I add a bit of interest over time, I'll get a sum. So it could be $1,000, put in at 10% for 1 year, that's 1,100. How does that look? We okay with that? And simple interest is usually used under a year. And that's just the easy one. Okay, and so we use it for really simple problems. Now, compound interest means you're paying interest on the interest. Okay? So if you're in the United States, they compound monthly, J12. You'll see it in the formulas. So every month they're compounding. Okay, and they do that by law. In Canada, we use J2. We compound only twice a year. Okay, so our interest rates are a tiny bit less than the American interest rates. If you were offered the same interest rate in Seattle and Vancouver, take the Vancouver loan. Okay, because it'll be cheaper. Now, the formula we have to use for that is, again, we're going P over time, ending up with an amount. And here it is here. Changed a bit. You can see we're doing a power sign out there. We're compounding. So I here you could write is the interest rate per conversion period. So the interest being charged per conversion period. You know, in the States that's the interest rate monthly, and in Canada it's the interest rate semi-annually. N is the number of compounding periods. N is the number of compounding periods. So I'm just going to write down a problem that I had pre-written, and you can see how the formula works. You're putting in $40,000. It's at 6%. It's in there for 10 compounding periods. It will give you in the future 71,634. We okay at that? What do you think? So 40,000 at this end will build up to 71,634 if the interest rate was 6%, say per year for 10 years. It would add up that much interest and compound into it. Okay? We then reach something else called an annuity. An annuity is a series of payments. It has a future value and a present value. And here are the payments coming in, and they're called R. This is also present value on your calculator of an annuity. SN is future value of an annuity. Is that okay? Yeah. So this is where, every month you're putting in savings and you're building it up to an amount of money in the future. Okay? So that would be savings going in. A really typical example is a pension. The present value is I owe an amount of money and I'm paying it back. A really good example of that is a mortgage. In a mortgage, I borrow an amount of money on a house, and I pay back on it every month. Okay? Now, there's formulas that we have for this. See if I can remember them. I think that's present value, future value, and I'm willing to tell you that I didn't prep this. I'm getting old and foggy. I should know this like the back of my hand. Plus I to the n minus 1. And I think there's an I under it. Yep, that's it. So that's corrected that formula. Yeah, and the other formula is good. Not a problem. So that should be good there. Okay? You'll use those formulas in the course. If you get a chance here, it would be really useful if you could buy one or just bring it in. Get yourself a financial calculator. And you'll be able to do all kinds of problems with annuities, compounding, or simple interest. You'll need to look for the following keys, and you can always see them right here. You can buy these for about $40, Staples or whatever. And the keys are N, 1 over Y, PV, PMT, and future value. So by having these central keys of N, I or 1 over Y, PV, PMT or FV, future value, you can do some incredibly complex problems here and work them out. Or compounding here. I use this calculator like crazy in the appraisal business, working out cash flows and so on. Okay?
So in our day-to-day life, there won't be an example where we try to reduce the average person.
If you wanted to work out if I have these savings that I've generated every month and the rate of return from the bank is 4%, what will I have 25 years from now? This is the formula you're going to use. How the money built up to that. Okay? Or when I was working at the college, I had a pension. I could work out that this is the contribution going in every month. And you could kind of project what would be there in terms of your pension when it came out. This one here is for debt. Personal loans, mortgages, all that kind of stuff. Okay? And you can simply use this formula to work out what you're owing. Yeah? So we're okay on that. And I think, yeah, they're very handy to have. And I know in the business department, week 1, we're getting everybody to buy one. And they end up using it all over the place. Okay, so I'd highly recommend it. Okay, so we're done for tonight. So if you can remember to try looking at some of those computer programs, Mint Canada would be a good place to begin, and see if you can do 1 month or 3 months, and see if you can do a projected 1 year, and then see how that would change your net worth statement. Okay? When you're looking at your expenses, please remember to, and income, is look at your financial goals. That's key. I mean, you worked them out last week. But what you're doing with your spending, does it reflect your goals or not? I think would be a good thing. Okay? And we're done then. So good night.